line, we need our measuring line here, and of course our vertical measuring line. Actually, with the vertical measuring line, you don't have to draw all these units on your paper. And even with this, you don't need to draw all your units on your paper as well. They're already here on the structured approach. That's all that really matters, and we're just doing a simple grid. As long as you can see your units on your measuring line underneath, that's all that really matters. So again, horizon line, measuring line, and your vertical measuring line or your distance line. It's not that this is not really a distance line anymore. From here, from your center vision to your station point is a distance line. But when we extend it up here, it also becomes a vertical measuring line. And the reason why it would be appropriate to have it here is because this is at 0, which means there is 0 distortion in this area along this horizontal measuring line and the vertical measuring line. There's no distortion to it at all. Anything past this, any vertical past this would have that distortion to it, if it's in perspective. All right, so from 0, I'm going to draw lines converging to the left and right vanishing point. Okay, and notice I'm doing this in blue because this is going to be my grid. And I'm not drawing this on my paper because I want to be able to reuse it. I'm not drawing it on my tracing paper. I mean, I'm drawing on my tracing paper only. All right, so these are ground lines. And we're going to draw 1-inch units, I'm sorry, 3/4 inch units on the right and left measuring line to the appropriate measuring point. But we're going to stop right here at the ground line. We're not going to draw all the way through unless you want to do a lot of erasing. And I will actually use my big ruler for this. Oh, see, I made a mistake already. So never draw lines converging to the vanishing point because you're not going to get a proper measurement. The only possible way to get these measurements in perspective in a proper way is to draw it to the proper measuring point, or line it up, align it with a proper measuring point, and draw a line to the ground plane. These two ground lines do indicate where the ground plane is. point, which is the opposite side. And make sure your pencils are sharp. So it should look something like this when you're done, or at least at this moment. We're not far from done. We're more than 3/4 of the way done with this. But we do have to extend it. We do have to make the grid bigger. And that's where we use a diagonal vanishing point. And we simply just use a diagonal vanishing point to the very end. Wherever it stops, you draw it all the way here to the ground line. Right there. And then based on this, we can continue to extend our grid. So again, when you use a diagonal vanishing point and you draw a line to the very end of your grid, you have all these lines that it crosses that you can converge, and you can use these measurements to draw lines converging to the vanishing point to advance your grid or to build your grid further. And so I'm almost done with this side. And then I'll jump to the other. And at a certain point, the grid may not be useful. Like, it goes really far back here. I can still see it. I can probably still use it. But the other side, it gets very small. And so it'll be kind of iffy if I can actually use the grid that far back. If I extend all of these, because that's quite a bit. So I will go as far as I can, but as soon as the grid starts to get a little bit muddy, I will stop. I will probably not go all the way back here and use these squares. So this one gets a little bit foggy in here, but it's so far back, I don't really care. This one should be a little bit closer. And I'm going to try to see what the culprit was. And I have a feeling just my ruler moved. Yeah, my ruler moved a smidgen. And I'm not that anal that I'm going to try to fix that one over here. You can probably see it. So after that, I just want to make sure it's nice and clean. And I think the only other thing I will do to this is make sure that my measured units here are visible, because I will be using it later on. So I want to make sure that my measurements are spot on, so I'm going to make these units a little bit darker. Or actually, I don't even think I added them on to begin with. And I also want to make sure I label everything correctly. So I have my left measuring point, right measuring point, diagonal vanishing point, and my center of vision, and of course indicating these. And it would be great to put the scale on here. So scale is 3/4 of an inch equals 1 inch, 1 foot. 3/4 of an inch equals 1 foot. Now, you could actually change this too. I mean, this is what we're going to be using for our class, but later on, if you want these squares to be 3/4 of an inch equals 2 feet, or maybe even 5 feet, you can draw some very, very large areas in scale. Okay, so this is our 2-point perspective formal grid. 2-point formal grid. So again, we're not going to draw a informal grid because we generally don't use it that much. But if time permits, I can show you guys how to make one. It will not be precise like this at all. It is a formal grid. So with this, we preserved our structural approach that we can use again and again and again. And of course, we can add we could actually add multiple measuring lines on our structural approach if we want to use different ones. We don't just have to have one measuring line. The measuring line obviously is the bottom of our picture plane. So if we were to create another measuring line, we would, like if I create another measuring line up here instead, then it would definitely move the eye level up. So let's say our measuring line was actually up here, then this grid would actually be a little bit more shallow than what you see here. This one's a little bit deeper because we have close to a 9-foot eye level, so we're kind of like looking down onto this plane. Totally appropriate for what we're going to do do this week and next week. So with this, there's a lot of different, as I said before, there's a lot of different things that we can do with this. I put another sheet of tracing paper on top of this, and I drew the ground plane, or the ground line rather. This whole thing is a ground plane, obviously. And then I marked 10, and I could probably do 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I usually mark increments down here, so, or measurements down here, so I can keep track of it. There's 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here's 20. So I like to do that so it makes it a little bit easier. It's a little bit of a shorthand for me. Okay, so with this, if I wanted to create a wall, I'm not going to do it on my actual grid. I mean, I could do that, but I want to be able to use this for a lot of different things. So if I want to create like an interior, or let's say just a wall, I can do that on a separate sheet of paper, but also just keep these sheets of paper together since it's based one's an extension of the other. And I will put all this other information down, like the horizon line, measuring line, ground plane, and the vertical measuring line. And my units up here. I don't need these units here anymore because I already have my grid here. And I'm not going to redo the grid. I'm going to create a wall 15 feet out. Okay, I'm going to put a line up here. And this wall is going to be 12 feet tall. So here's 10, 11, 12. So with this, and you don't have to do this, this is just something, you could if you want to, but this is just something extra so you guys can see what can be done. So this is because I'm creating a wall 15 feet out, I need to remember that this is what we call a true height line, a true height line. And what this does is this gives us exact measurements that we need to for heights that we can transfer anywhere around the grid, like we learned with our square demo and cube demo. So with this, I want to create a 12-foot high wall here. So this is 12 right here, a 10, 11, 12. And so I'll take this and I'll draw a line converging to the left vanishing point. This is at 12. And the reason why I'm transferring it to the left vanishing point is because the wall I'm creating here needs to have this measurement transferred over, and the only way to do that is to draw a line converging to the left vanishing point, because now you can kind of see this wall here. If I were to create a wall here, it would need to be 12. So that's how I do it here. And then with this, I draw a line converging to the right vanishing point. And I'm keeping this in red because I'm not sure how far out to go with this. I mean, I could go to infinity, but that would be useless. So I'm going to create a wall that is 15 feet. It's 15 feet away from here, from the ground line, and also it's going to be 15 feet wide. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Here's 15. There's 10. There's 5. Okay, so with that, I'm going to draw a line to the left vanishing point. And this is kind of arbitrary until I draw this line, the bottom line, or the baseline, to the right vanishing point, and now you can see where it ends. It ends right here. Where these two cross, this is 15, as this is 15, this is 15, as this is 15. And now I'll draw my vertical here. And this is where I have to kind of be careful because the grid is kind of small here. So I'm just going to make sure that everything is nice and tight, and I'll do this in blue. I could probably erase this. I was a little bit hasty with this line. There we go. And now I can oh, why did I do that? I messed up. You guys saw that and you didn't even tell me. Okay. Some of you saw that, just said nothing, but it's okay. There, I was supposed to do this. I was a little overzealous. There we go. Okay, so this is 15 feet high as this is 15 feet high because, I'm sorry, this is 12 feet high as this is 12 feet high because I use this height line, I transfer these units to here, and then zigzag back to the right vanishing point to create my wall. Okay, now this is not just a wall because we have to grid it. So with that, okay, I'm going to do this. Now, all of these units here needs to go here. So I can just line up, I can create lines converging to the left vanishing point to create all these units here. I can't do it here. And is there somebody that can tell me why I can't do it here? Well, actually, you can, but we'll learn that next week. How come I can't transfer these units here to this line? Yes. Yes, it's not aligned in the same way that these two are. These are, see, this is 12 feet in perspective as this is 12 feet. Now, this is 12 feet in perspective too, but it's not lined up in the same way. It's not on the same plane. Now, in reality, you could do it. Okay, you could do it. And it's a little bit too close for me to do it, and I'll show you next week how to do it. I'll show you now, and we'll talk about it next week. Now, I can just line this up to every one of these units here to the left vanishing point to get all of these units here, so I can, transfer these units here. Now, I can do this all the way up, so I can get all of these measured units along this line. But I can also do this too. I wouldn't do it here though, because, I'm going to show you how to do it because we're going to do it next week. I can actually do this. Okay, now what am I possibly doing? This is one of your terms from your vocabulary list. Does anybody know what this is? This point right here? You guys learned it. We didn't exercise it until now, and we're going to exercise it next week. What is that? What did I just do? I took 12, drew a line through the top of the corner, because we know this is 12, right here to the horizon line, and I went to 0, drew a line through 0 here, all the way to the horizon line. No, it's not a measuring point. It's one of your terms that we didn't learn yet. Nope. No, this is a distance line. This is called an auxiliary vanishing point. Or special vanishing point, it's the same thing. Okay, so what this allows, because you can see this is a bottom of 12, right? And this is a top of 12. And look what it does. If I draw a line from here to the top of 12 to the horizon line, and I drew it from the base of this line to the base of this line, it winds up in the same place. So theoretically, I can do this to every one of these units and get it here. Okay, so it's kind of doesn't, we're going to exercise this next week. The reason why this is key is because if I put a wall here as well, I would want all of these lines to converge and actually hit the same place here. And sometimes they don't align. So with that said, I at least wanted to tie in one of the terms that we haven't really covered yet, but we are going to cover it. Why something like that special vanishing point would be helpful is because if we're transferring these, if I'm creating two walls that needs a grid, I don't have to do two separate measuring lines or verticals to do it. I can just do one in the middle. Okay, so I'm just going to do this. I'm going to transfer these units here. I don't have to draw lines all the way to this either. I don't have to draw it all the way to here. I just need to align it. So I know some of you are having problems transferring your units over or making sure that you're accurate. And one of the things that I really try to do when I draw is making sure that my pencil is perpendicular to the paper or to the board. I will rarely do this or do this when I draw. I will almost always do this, and I will always look over to make sure I'm actually drawing exactly where I need to be drawing. I know some of you were having challenges with that. Okay, so now this is the easy part, or the fun part rather. So I have all of these units here on my grid. And this is where I have to be vigilant at making sure that my my marks across here are going to be accurate. So I try to look at it first and making sure that my the space between them is foreshortened, which means it's going to be larger here and smaller here. So I'm going to look at all of these, because when you get back here, these angles get very acute and extremely challenging to see where they meet or where they cross. And so I like to go and put my marks on it to make sure it's spot on. And quite honestly, sometimes I have to fudge a few to make sure it's going to work.